Hey, how's it going everyone? Entropy here today with another video. Today we're going to be doing an advanced guide on Dudley Emperor, the Spike Brothers deck. And yes, for JP players, we already have, the break red support. This is primarily for the global players. We are still on the second set of Spike Brothers. And even with, what we have so far, Spike Brothers is a force to be reckoned with. It's just very, very strong, does what it needs to do. And so today I do want to present some insights and advice that I do have accumulated over playing this deck for quite a while now, and see how I could help out players who are playing the deck, and players who are playing against the deck, because know yourself, know your enemy, right? All right. So pros and cons of this deck. Spike Brothers can multi-attack, up to 5 attacks if you Dudley Emperor correctly, and hit numbers as well, because you have 9+5s, 7+5s, 11+5s, and then 6+4s. You have a lot of different options to help you enable hitting your opponent's defensive numbers, and definitely very important in this game in Vanguard 0, and something that sets it a tier above the other multi-attacking clans, in my opinion. Next is that it does have a lot of multi-returning grade 3 options. This includes Juggernaut Maximum and Jelly Beans, and we all know how important grade 3 returnings options are. You can return triggers, and hitting more triggers is always nice. Not only that, but both of them have great utility. Jelly Bean searches for a booster, grade 1 booster, or grade 2 intercepts, definitely great. And then Juggernaut Maximum is an 11+5, enabling your multi-attacking and hitting your opponent's numbers, very, very strong. And then lastly, you have very, very great starting Vanguard options. Primarily everyone's talking about Mecha Trainer, but you can check out the other ones as well. If you do want to see how I rank them, do check out my starting Vanguard tier list video. But overall, I think they're all very strong options. Mecha Trainer is just way ahead of them because of its utility and options. Searching PG is just really great in the real game as well as in the Vanguard 0 game, because it is your one of 2 options to guard. So definitely very important. For cons, it doesn't have any self-damagers, so it is quite susceptible to damage denied, but I disagree with this comment, but I'll explain myself later again. There's only one ride target, with Dudley Emperor being a limit break card, and the deck doesn't really run that well with the other grade 3 options. Juggernaut Maximum, Jelly Beans, these are more supporting grade 3s than ride targets, and General Cypher is quite inconsistent, but I guess still generates card advantage and better than riding a Jelly Beans. And lastly, Glass Cannon. The deck is a very aggressive deck, but because of its units going back to the deck, it means that you don't have a front row to defend yourself in your mid game, late game, and so you're weaker on the defensive section of the game. But I personally, with my experience, I think that a lot of these cons can be mitigated, can be reduced, and it doesn't really affect the performance that well, which is why this deck is a very, very solid top tier deck, because it just has so many different choices, utilities, and can finish the game off without having too many weaknesses. So if you are interested in gameplay, do check out my Spike Brothers Dudley Emperor video in my channel. If you have, basically what the video covers is generally the deck list that I've been playing with, and I am still playing with to this day, and then actual footage of the game, so you can see in real time how I make these decisions and what these cards actually do together. So the list, I briefly talked about this in the video, so I will kind of skip over that right now. But there are some substitutes I think are worth considering. Deadly Daisy is something that someone commented and considered. I personally am not a big fan of Deadly Daisy because of the counterblast cost, as well as the fact that if you do search for Deadly Daisy with Jelly Beans, the positive is that it is an extra search target for Jelly Beans, but it means that Dudley Daisy is a vanilla 7K anyway, so why not play something else, as well as if you do choose to superior call it with Dudley Emperor or something, 7 counterblast 1 plus 4 plus 5 is a 12K booster, that significant, or is a 12K attacker that significant in this deck? No, you have so many options to hit numbers that I don't think it's worth spending a counterblast for this unit. Next, for the grade 2 slot, you do have the 7K Devil Summoner. On place, check the top card. If it's a grade 1 or grade 2, you can superior call it. Is it a great option? I don't think you should play more than one because, well, you want your 4 Douglases for your Jelly Bean search. You have your 4 Brackies for your multi-attacking and hitting numbers. And, you know, the last card you can consider replacing with is the 10k Panther. But the Panther just works both offensively and defensively as a 10k interceptor. The Devil Summoner is a great +1 for 2/3 of the time, 66% of the time. You know, assuming your deck is full, but with the 7k base stats and your cards generally being able to set up your board anyways, you know, playing more than one I think is overkill, and I'd rather have the 10k for the defensive approach to patch up that weakness of the deck. And then lastly, for the grade 3 slot, you know, you play your 4 Jelly Beans, 4 Juggernaut maximum because they get to go back to the deck and have great utility. You play 4 Dudley Emperor because that is the core of the deck, the main character of the deck. And then you play 1 General Siegfried because, you know, it's a backup grade 3, and, you know, 4 right targets I feel like isn't enough, so you probably want to play at least 5. Some lists do, you know, play 4 General Siegfrieds. I think Game Width, you know, suggests that. You know, I tested that. I don't agree with it at all. General Siegfried is just really inconsistent, especially in this day, in this age of Vanguard 0. You know, you have to set up so you have an empty board space, you know, and it's not even guaranteed. And then you have to check a grade 3, you know. So, you know, it's not the best. But if you do want to play one more, you know, 6 right targets is also, you know, considerable. So, you know, cut 1 Juggernaut maximum if you want to. But, you know, why would you really cut, you know, a card that can go back to the deck and act as a trigger? I personally wouldn't suggest that. What's next? If you are a JP player, you will know that these cards come with the Break Red support. So wave 3 of Spike Brother support that JP just got. If you are not familiar with these cards, do check out my set 9 to set 12 top 5 most insane Break Red video to know more about Bat and Dagger. And then if you want to know more about the new PG and why it's very important, I will briefly talk about it, but you can also understand more about that in the PG Sentinel update video. So back to the deck. For the Mulligan, we want to keep 1 grade 1 non-PG, so you can, you know, not get grid stuck, and then 1 grade 2 or Jelly Beans, because Jelly Beans can search for Dudley Douglas, the grade 2 9k Dudley, on your first turn. You can search for the grade 1 Dudley as well, but you can't really ride that card on your first turn because Jelly Beans works during their main phase and you ride during your ride phase. So, you know, if you are a beginner, do know that. And then, you know, of course you want to search for Dudley Emperor, and if not, I'm okay with a General Siegfried. But if you have both, then just toss the General Siegfried away, keep the Dudley Emperor, because after all, it is the Dudley Emperor deck, and you only have, you know, 4 or 5 main ride targets, and if you do miss it, then, you know, you'll be stuck with, you know, something that's not optimal. You can still win games with Juggernaut maximum if you do ride that, you know, General Siegfried obviously, but if you do have Dudley Emperor, the deck just runs so much smoother, and you know, you just get to do your combos, and, you know, the deck actually functions properly. So what are the ride targets that you want? On the top row is the ones you really want, and then the bottom is the next best alternative. The first one is the Medical Manager. It's non-placed on Vanguard Rearguard Circle. So, you know, why not just ride it anyways? Because your other rearguards, you know, your PG, you know, preferably you keep in your hand, and then your other units like the Dudley 6+4 or the Reckless Express, you know, you'd rather use them as a booster or a rearguard for greater utility. And I guess if not, then you ride the 6k because, well, you do want to keep the Reckless Express for the higher base boost stats, as well as the option to multi-attack with it later on. And then for the grade 2, similar, you do rather ride the Panther over stuff like, you know, Brachy, for example. Panther has, you know, great stats, 10k, so you're more comfortable without an interceptor. So on defense on turn 2, but if not, then ride the Dudley Douglas, you know, a 9k. I mean, if it's in your hand, it's a vanilla anyways because it only has a skill when placed from the deck to the board, and even then you rarely use it anyways. So I mean, you know, both of them are great, but one has a, you know, higher base stat than the other, so I prefer riding the 10k. And lastly, you know, the grade 3, you have 5 ride targets, 4 Dudley Emperors, and 1 General Siegfried. They all actually do something on the Vanguard Circle, unlike the other grade 3s, so preferably ride these. And then worst case scenario, I guess ride Juggernaut maximum. And then worst case scenario, stay on grade 2 and don't ride Jelly Beans. I don't like riding Jelly Beans because I'd rather have a heal in my deck. So let's talk about some tips and techs, some general strategies and insights available. For first of all, counterblast management. If you note the list and the choices that Spec Brothers have, they don't have it in Flipper right now. We will get one when set 9 comes around, as the Wave 3 Spec Brothers support comes. There's a card that does unflip, but as of right now, we don't have that choice other than proccing heals. So what counterblast skills do you want to use often? Is valuable enough to not really think about it, or which ones do you want to rarely use? Dudley Emperor and Mecha Trainer you want to use often. They just generate so much value, and superior calling to letting your multi attacks happen, and then Mecha Trainer searching a PG or the PCBD. These cards are very important to this general strategy, and you should not question using them. Generally just using them is the right play. And then the Dudley's Dudley Grade 2, Dudley Douglas, and the Dudley Grade 1, Dudley Daisy. Used rarely, really rarely, unless you don't have any other options. You really do need to hit the numbers to end the game. I wouldn't really use them, and I don't even use Dudley Daisy in the deck because of the counterblast management issue. So yeah. Mecha Trainer, we talked about Mecha Trainer just now, so I would generally suggest using Mecha Trainer on turn 2. And the reason why is because, first of all, you dodge retire skills, Kagero, Narukami, and then later on, Gold Paladin, you have a lot of retire skills gradually attached to these clans. And then, the Mecha Trainer is just really valuable, and you don't really want to lose out the chance to search for a PG or a Reckless Express or another grade 1 piece that you do need. PG is always valuable. It is the one of 2 guarding options that you have, PG or intercepts. So why not have an extra one in your hand just for insurance? And then lastly, it's efficient counterblast usage with jelly beans. If you do use your jelly beans, or if you haven't used your jelly beans in your early game, and you have 4 jelly beans in your deck, the likelihood of hitting a heal isn't actually that bad. And if you don't counterblast, with Mecha Trainer earlier on, then you might not heal out that counterblasted damage. You might heal out, a counterblast that you haven't used, and that means that again, the counterblast management issue is just so tight that I find it valuable that I just use the Mecha Trainer anyways, get the PG, and then if I hit a jelly beans later on, then I get to heal a counterblasted damage, and so I get to make more plays later on. At least I get to use my Dudley Douglas later on if I do choose to use Dudley Emperor twice. For the PGs, we talked about how there's a new PG later on in the future in set 3 of Spec Brothers event, and here's an interesting idea. Why not play both? Because Mecha Trainer can search for either or, right? Any grade 1 in your deck. You can search for the old PG or the new PG. You can play 2 of each. You can play 3 in 1. But why not just play one of the other? Because, well, yes, it is a Limber Break deck. Especially with the later support, you do want to get your Break Ride and activated. But sometimes, your opponent could be playing a high roll, 9 crit deck, like Spectral Duke or Easel and stuff like that. And, at that point, I would rather have the old PG just so I don't stay on 5 and then die the next turn. We already know that Spikes is a weak deck in terms of defense, so why risk it that much? Even then, the deck does enough to hit the numbers and generate enough value in order to sustain itself into the late game. So then, you don't really need to go into Limber Break 4 or 5 damage so early into the game. But that's an option you can consider during the game, which is why I do recommend thinking about playing a mix between the 2 PGs rather than just one or the other. Next is the alternative right target General Siegfried. General Siegfried isn't that great of a card. It's quite inconsistent, but it is very different. It is a higher risk play style. It works better in the early game when you're at low damage count because you do want to keep your front row open, or after multi-attack you will have a front row open, and then when you drive Chicken Grade 3 you call it out for an extra attack. The Grade 3 doesn't have intercept in the game, so you can't really protect yourself that effectively on the turn you do use your General Siegfried skill. But you do generate card advantage and you still get to apply the pressure. So while you're at low damage or early game, it's still effective, but late game, I rarely see myself actually setting up so I can use my General Siegfried unless it's the final turn. So let's talk about Dudley Emperor. Generally speaking, because we talked about how Help, it is a glass cannon deck, and it has a lack of defensive options. We play 4 of the Panthers because it's a 10k base. It helps you hit numbers with any booster. You can hit, 11k Vanguards on 1 defense, at 16. And also on defense, 10k means that your opponent has to generally either have a 10k themselves or invest a booster onto the board, which means like that's great, right? Because you know that your opponent has less options later on. So generally how I would do it is, have right column attack, Reckless Express or Braki or Juggernaut Maximum, left column, right column, and then Dudley Emperor to call out 2 10Ks. I do this during the, if I do have boosters primarily, and then they still hit numbers, they're good, generally safe option to do. If you are going for the late game push, the final turn, do the same, attack, pop back to the deck, attack, pop back to the deck, Dudley Emperor to attack, call out 2 Brakis or two Dudley Douglases, hit those numbers, 9+5, and then finish the game. Some people do suggest going for Juggernaut Maximum. I don't suggest or recommend it that much because you are calling out a trigger from your deck, and the trigger does go back to the bottom of the deck. And if you're gonna call out something anyways, why not call out a grade 2 with the option of going back to the deck. If you hit triggers, if you hit the Juggernaut Maximum anyways, then you can apply the 5, and then you might not even need to put it back to the deck, so you have an extra safety net for your next turn as an intercept. Like you can call it the Braki and not use the skill, right? So yeah, I think it's just more valuable, especially if you have a booster. If you don't, then Juggernaut Maximum to hit 11+5 to hit 16 to hit your opponent's numbers definitely is still a viable choice. And lastly, something that you can do is to set up your board with Dudley Emperor. For example, you don't have a lot of options left. You call out your another grade 3 on your right column. You attack with it. Your Dudley Emperor attacks your opponent's Vanguard, and then you call out the Devil Summoner. The Devil Summoner, and then you call out a booster for the Devil Summoner, so the Devil Summoner can hit numbers, 14 or 13. The Devil Summoner that can then check the top chord for hopefully a grade 1 or grade 2. Call it on top of the grade 3, the rested unit, and then enable an extra attack if you do really need it. If you hit, because like all the cards in Spike Brothers generally require an empty rigor circle except for Devil Summoner. So Devil Summoner can enable your high roll, I hope everything works out strategy, or enable an extra intercept or an extra booster for your future turns. So don't disrespect the Devil Summoner. It is chance based, but it definitely does provide value for the deck in a pinch. So let's finally talk about some matchup ideas and how this deck generally works in the metagame. What's the strategy? Well, generally speaking, you see these 3 clans on ladder most of the time, or these are the ones I've seen most of the time, as we talked about in the previous advanced guide as well. For Narukami, this is a really threatening deck against a lot of clans because they can't, wiping out your opponent's front row in 1 attack is pretty strong. But with that said, with Spec Brothers dodging and going back to the deck, the utility of Vermilion is lower. If your intercepts are going to die anyways, just, why not consider bouncing them to hit the last numbers to deal 1 extra damage. And then, your opponent's Vermilion just lost value over its own skill. Against the Saishin, Saishin and Mecha Trainer often leads to a hold off where neither one wants to give damage to the other, so then the Mecha Trainer can't use the skill or the Saishin can't retire the Mecha Trainer. As a Spikes player, you are happy to oblige and not deal any damage, because as the game goes longer, you are stronger in this matchup because you can attack more than your opponent. The Vermilion is less effective, and the Dungaree as well. And so definitely, it's to the Spec Brothers players' benefit if you stall up the game. Anyways, so yeah. And then for the mirror match, it really is dependent on if you do hit your number, build up your columns correctly, use your Dudley Emperor correctly, and just be patient with their plays. And then for the Ezel matchup, I would suggest you just play normally. Remember to use your Mecha Trainer early because Ezel is going to get some retire skills through Blaster Dark Spirit to retire the Mecha Trainer soon. And they do limit break, and but with Spike Brothers being able to multi-attack so much, you break through their intercepts and then you hit face and then you attack them more. Generally not a very big issue in terms of the matchup, and generally speaking, Spike Brothers just does really well against these clans. Some other clans to mention is the cross-ride numbers, because after all, Spike Brothers is a multi-attacking clan, and the cross-ride base is very important. Like you can't build proper columns without sacrificing counterblast or soul blast to hit 18 or 23. So definitely do try not to extend the game too long against the end or against PBO, and try to finish them off early, especially since they're not limit break clans anyways. Just attack. But generally speaking, the longer the game is, the stronger you are. With on-demand PG searching and trigger, heal trigger, draw trigger returning, your opponent can't really OTK you without giving you one turn of limit break 4, even if they damage deny you. And so you have at least one turn's chance to push them to 5 and then win the game on that turn or the next turn. So definitely a really, really strong deck. I think we covered a lot of the negatives that people have been talking about, whether it's a glass cannon. No, not really, because you can also set up intercepts. You don't have to go all in with Dudley Emperor, and you can build proper columns too. And then what else? We can talk about the right target. Yes, general side feed is very important, but you can mulligan really hard for it. And even if you do ride the general side feed, it is still a viable option. And then lastly, we talked about how self-damaging, but self-damaging just gives Spike Brothers more time to pick up the pieces they need to multi-attack, and then set up their late game push so much more effectively. So I guess that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. If you have subscribed, then proceed to the next thing, which is to like it. Tell me what you think about the video. If you have experience with the Spike Brother deck, tell me if I missed anything, or if you have any other suggestions or recommendations for other players. A lot of you do provide very, very good ideas and insights, especially from a different clan's perspective, because talking about these advanced guides, you do really want to know how other clans match up against Spike Brothers as well. And I don't have decks for every single clan. I am a free-to-play player after all, so a lot of these perspectives is from a Spike player, and as well as a limited number of other matchup perspectives. But yeah, if you do play other clans like Angel Feathers, for example, where you have the ability to trade out damage and gain power as you take damage, which does stop multi-attack. Tell me how that matchup feels for you. Any insights you do want to present Spike Brother players or people who are playing against Spike Brothers. I guess that's very important, and I do really value all of your comments and ideas. You really help out all the players as well as myself. I really want to know so I can play better as well. If you did find this video really useful, do share this video, and again, do subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. And yeah, thank you all so much. This has been a very, very long video. I was doing this, the slides and everything on my flight to Toronto. So yeah, I guess that's it for this video. I hope you enjoy. Look forward to the next wave of Spike Brother stuff, because that is very, very interesting to me. The deck seems to cater much more towards aggression over being able to develop your board through more tempo plays, because of how Bad and Dagger doesn't give you the choice of keeping the front row rearguard. But in exchange, you just hit so much numbers more efficiently and effectively, and your multi-attack is just up to another tier again. So definitely something that I will be looking forward to, and I will be looking into other players to see how they play the deck. So I guess that's it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.